Story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. Derek Mason stood at his office window, gazing at the Washington Monument, piercing the D.C. skyline. His reflection in the glass showed a man in his early 40s, tall, broad-shouldered, with steel-gray eyes that carried the watchful intensity of someone who had seen combat. The corner office on the 20th floor of the Mason Digital Defense headquarters served as a daily reminder of how far he'd come from his humble beginnings. His phone buzzed. A text from Roxanne. "Don't forget, dinner with the Sullivans, Walshes, and Reeves tonight. 7 p.m. Derek's lips curved into a slight smile. These dinner parties had become a monthly tradition, a chance for him to unwind with the three men who had helped build his empire. James Sullivan, his CFO, with his quick wit and quicker fingers on a calculator. Peter Walsh, whose silver tongue had secured them countless government contracts. Michael Reeves, whose operational expertise kept their cybersecurity systems running with ruthless efficiency. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Mason?" His assistant, Sarah, stepped in. "The Pentagon called. They want to move up the timeline on Project Firewall. Tell them I'll need to consult with the team," Derek replied, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone used to command. "Set up a meeting with Michael and Peter for tomorrow morning." As Sarah left, Derek's mind drifted back to his early days in the Marines. Intelligence operations had taught him to trust his instincts, and lately, those instincts had been restless. Little things, a misplaced document here, an odd financial report there. Nothing concrete, but enough to trigger the hypervigilance that had kept him alive in war zones. His phone rang again. James Sullivan's name flashed on the screen. "Derek." James's voice carried its usual confident warmth. "Got a minute to go over the quarterly projections?" "Come up to my office," Derek replied. He heard the slight hesitation before James agreed. 5 minutes later, James strode in, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Derek's entire wardrobe during his first year in business. James had always been the smoothest of Derek's inner circle, with his perfectly coiffed silver hair and country club manners. "These numbers," Derek said without preamble, sliding a tablet across his desk. "Something doesn't add up in the R&D allocation." James barely glanced at the screen. "Probably just an accounting quirk. You know how complicated government contracts can get with their categorizations." Derek watched his old friend's face with the same attention he'd once used to read potential insurgents. "Funny thing about quirks, they tend to have patterns. What are you suggesting?" James's smile remained fixed, but something flickered in his eyes. "Nothing yet." Derek leaned back in his chair. "Just making an observation." The tension broke as James's phone chimed. "Karen," he explained, checking the message. "Reminding me about dinner tonight. You know how our wives get about these gatherings." Derek nodded, thinking of Roxanne. 15 years of marriage, and sometimes he still caught himself watching her like she was a stranger. She'd been especially distant lately, citing late meetings with clients interested in multimillion-dollar properties. "Speaking of wives," James continued, "how's Roxanne handling the Potomac Heights listing?" "Karen mentioned it's quite the property." "Haven't heard much about it," Derek replied, noting how James's right hand twitched slightly, a tell he'd noticed years ago when his CFO was holding something back. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. At 6, Derek headed home to their McLean mansion, a modernist statement of glass and steel that Roxanne had insisted on when they'd made their first real money. He found her in their bedroom, applying makeup. Her reflection in the vanity mirror caught his eye, still stunning at 39, with honey blonde hair and the kind of refined beauty that came from generations of good breeding. "You're home early," she said, her tone casual but carrying an undertone he couldn't quite read. "Thought I'd shower before everyone arrives." He loosened his tie, watching her hands as she fastened a diamond tennis bracelet, his gift for their 10th anniversary. "Anything interesting happen at work today?" "Just the usual," she replied, dabbing perfume behind her ears. "Though I might have a buyer for the Henderson estate. Peter Walsh mentioned his brother might be interested." Derek filed away this information, noting how she didn't quite meet his eyes in the mirror. "Peter's brother? Didn't know you were working with him." "Oh, it just came up in conversation when I ran into Peter at Cafe Milano last week." She stood, smoothing her black cocktail dress. I should check on the caterers. Derek watched her leave, his military-trained mind cataloging details. The slight stiffness in her shoulders, the way she'd mentioned Peter so casually, the lunch he hadn't known about. While showering, he thought about his 3 closest friends, all arriving soon with their wives. James Sullivan, who'd helped secure their initial funding through his banking connections. Peter Walsh, whose legal expertise had navigated them through the complex world of government contracting. Michael Reeves, the technical genius who'd transformed Derek's rough ideas into sophisticated security systems. He'd met them all shortly after leaving the Marines, when Mason Digital Defense was just an ambitious plan scrawled on bar napkins. They believed in him then, or at least in his potential. Now, 15 years later, they were all millionaires many times over. The doorbell rang as he was buttoning his shirt. Through the bedroom window, he saw James and Karen Sullivan's Mercedes pulling up behind Peter and Rachel Walsh's Audi. Michael and Diane Reeves would be right behind them. They always traveled in a convoy from their nearby homes in the same gated community. Voices drifted up from below, the familiar rhythm of greetings and laughter. Derek checked his reflection one last time, adjusting his cuffs. The man in the mirror looked exactly like what he was supposed to be. A successful CEO, devoted husband, loyal friend. But underneath that polished exterior, the Marine who had survived countless covert operations was wide awake and watching. He descended the stairs to find the usual scene. Their 3 couples clustered in the living room, Roxanne playing the perfect hostess as she distributed drinks. Karen Sullivan, tall and athletic, was describing her latest charity gala. Rachel Walsh, petite and sharp-eyed, listened while shooting glances at her phone. Diane Reeves, the quietest of the wives, nursed her gin and tonic with the careful attention of someone who had learned to observe more than speak. Derek. Peter Walsh raised his whiskey in greeting. Just telling Michael about that new contract with the NSA. Derek accepted a drink from Roxanne, noting how her hand brushed Peter's arm as she passed. A touch that could have been innocent, but set off warning bells in his mind. Fascinating stuff, Michael added, his programmer's hands fidgeting with his glass. Though I'm more interested in hearing about James's poker tournament. How much did you drop this time, Jimmy? James's laugh seemed forced. A gentleman never discusses losses, only wins. Since when are you a gentleman? Karen teased her husband, but Derek caught the edge in her voice. The evening proceeded like dozens before it, good food, expensive wine, comfortable conversation between people who had known each other's secrets for years, or thought they did. Derek watched it all with growing certainty that something was wrong. The way James kept checking his phone under the table. How Peter's eyes lingered on Roxanne when he thought no one was looking. Michael's nervous energy, more pronounced than usual. Later, after their guests had left, Derek stood in his home office, staring at the digital security feeds that monitored every inch of their property. Roxanne had called it paranoid when he'd installed the system, but old habits died hard. He rewound the footage from earlier, watching their friends arrive and leave. Paused on a frame of Roxanne embracing Peter goodbye. Nothing inappropriate, but something in their body language raised his hackles. His laptop chimed with an alert from the office security system. Someone was accessing financial databases at an unusual hour. He pulled up the logs, recognizing James's credentials. Derek opened his safe and removed a secure phone, one of several burner devices he kept for emergencies, a habit from his intelligence days. He scrolled through his contacts and found a number he hadn't used in years. Taylor Rodriguez Investigations. A gravelly voice answered on the second ring. This is Derek Mason. Jack Thompson gave me your number. The Marine Colonel? That's right. Derek's voice hardened. I need surveillance. 3 men, 1 woman. Full coverage, complete discretion. That's not cheap, Mr. Mason. Money isn't an issue. Trust is. There was a pause. I'll need names and details. Derek provided them, along with access codes to basic background files. When he finished, Taylor asked, These people, they're close to you? Very. Derek's voice could have frozen hell. That's why I need to know exactly how they're betraying me. After hanging up, Derek stood at his window, watching the city lights below. In the glass, his reflection showed the face not of a polished CEO, but of the Marine who had learned in the hardest possible way that trust given to the wrong people was a weapon that could destroy you. Upstairs, he could hear Roxanne getting ready for bed, humming softly to herself. His wife of 15 years, the mother of their children, the woman who had stood beside him as he built an empire. Derek smiled, but it was the smile of a predator scenting prey. If his instincts were right, and they usually were, someone was about to learn a very painful lesson about betraying Derek Mason's trust. He just hadn't decided yet exactly how many people would need to be taught that lesson. Chapter 2. The Discovery. The first concrete evidence of betrayal arrived 3 weeks later, hidden in lines of code that most people would never understand. Derek sat in his private office at home, multiple monitors displaying security logs from Mason Digital Defense's servers. His cybersecurity background from the Marines had taught him to look for patterns, and these patterns screamed of deliberate intrusion. Access denied flashed across one screen, someone trying to breach the company's most secure databases. The user ID belonged to a junior developer, but the timestamp matched exactly when James Sullivan had badged into the building. Derek's phone buzzed. A text from Taylor Rodriguez. Financial records ready. In person only. He replied with an address, a private room at an exclusive club where he sometimes conducted sensitive business meetings. The kind of place where privacy was guaranteed and questions were never asked. An hour later, he sat across from Taylor, a compact woman with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She slid a tablet across the table. Your CFO has expensive habits, Taylor said without preamble. Underground poker games, high-stakes sports betting. Conservative estimate puts his gambling debts at $3 million. Derek scrolled through bank statements, wire transfers, and surveillance photos. James at various casinos, looking progressively more desperate. Show me the money trail. He's been creative. Taylor pulled up more documents. Created shell companies, fake vendors, inflated expenses. Small amounts at first, but getting bolder. Total theft from your company, approximately $7 million over 8 months. The others? Taylor's expression darkened. That's where it gets interesting. Peter Walsh has been meeting with executives from rival firms. We have recordings. She played an audio file. Peter's familiar voice filled the room. Mason's too focused on ethics. These contracts are worth billions. They should go to people who understand how the game is really played. Derek's face remained impassive, but his hands tightened on the tablet. Michael Reeves? Selling company secrets. Taylor showed him photographs of Michael meeting with known corporate spies. But here's the real kicker. All 3 of them have something else in common. She pulled up surveillance photos that made Derek's blood run cold. Roxanne, his wife, in compromising positions with each of his trusted friends. Different hotels, different dates, but the same betrayal. How long? His voice could have cut Diamond. The affairs? At least 6 months. But it's not just infidelity. Taylor produced more evidence. Emails, text messages, recorded conversations. Your wife is the conductor of this orchestra. She's been playing them against each other, gathering information, pushing them to take bigger risks. Derek studied the evidence with clinical detachment. They're wives. Karen Sullivan knows about the gambling. She's been documenting everything, preparing for divorce. Rachel Walsh suspects the affairs but doesn't know about the corporate espionage. Diane Reeves. Taylor paused. She's known about her husband's activities for months. Been keeping detailed records. Why haven't they come forward? Fear, mostly. These women have comfortable lives. But I think they're reaching their breaking points. Derek nodded slowly, his military training kicking in. Assess the situation. Identify assets and liabilities. Plan the operation. There's more, Taylor continued. Your wife and your friends are working with Hamilton Defense Systems. They're planning to frame you for selling classified information to foreign agents. The evidence is already being manufactured. Show me everything. For the next 2 hours, they went through it all. Bank records showing payments to professional forgers. Emails discussing how to plant false evidence. Surveillance photos of meetings with Hamilton Defense executives. They're thorough, Taylor admitted. If this goes according to their plan, you'll lose everything. The company, your reputation, your freedom. Derek's smile would have terrified anyone who knew his military background. They have no idea what thorough really means. He spent the next week gathering his own intelligence. At the office, he maintained his usual routine while secretly monitoring every electronic communication. At home, he played the role of unsuspecting husband while documenting Roxanne's movements. The betrayal crystallized one night as he watched security footage of his wife in his home office, photographing confidential documents while he was supposedly asleep. The woman he'd trusted for 15 years, plotting his destruction with the men he'd helped make wealthy. His secure phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. FBI agent Samantha Torres. Need to meet. Urgent. Derek vetted the contact through his military connections before agreeing to a meeting at a secure location. Agent Torres turned out to be a sharp-featured woman in her 40s with the focused intensity of a career investigator. Hamilton Defense Systems has been on our radar for years, she explained, spreading files across the table. They have a pattern of destroying competitors through similar methods. Frame the CEO, buy the company for pennies on the dollar during the ensuing chaos, strip it for assets and patents. How many companies? 5 that we can prove. But your case is different. She showed him detailed surveillance reports. Your wife made it personal. She's been working with him for over a year, laying the groundwork. Derek absorbed this information with dangerous calm. What's your interest in this? We want Hamilton. They've bought off too many local officials, scared off too many witnesses. You're our best chance to bring them down. She studied his face. But I'm guessing you have your own plans for revenge. I believe in appropriate consequences for actions. Agent Torres smiled grimly. Then let's discuss how your revenge can serve justice. They spent hours planning, combining FBI resources with Derek's intimate knowledge of the conspirators. By the time they finished, they had crafted something that went beyond simple revenge. It was an operation worthy of his Special Forces days. That night, Derek stood in his home gym, pounding the heavy bag. Each strike represented a different betrayal: James's theft, Peter's sabotage, Michael's espionage, Roxanne's ultimate treachery. His phone buzzed with a message from Taylor. Hamilton Defense CEO meeting your wife tomorrow. Usual hotel. Derek grabbed a towel, his mind already mapping out the next phase. He learned in combat that the best way to deal with multiple enemies was to turn them against each other. His betrayers thought they were clever, thought they had him surrounded. They were about to learn what happened when you cornered a Marine who specialized in psychological warfare. Chapter 3. The Turning Point. Derek spent the next morning reviewing surveillance footage Taylor had gathered. The images painted a clear picture. James Sullivan leaving an upscale hotel at dawn, looking haunted. Peter Walsh at a private airstrip, handing over documents to a known operative from Hamilton Defense. Michael Reeves making late-night deliveries of company hard drives. His secure phone lit up with a message from Agent Torres. Hamilton CEO confirmed for tomorrow's meeting. Audio surveillance in place. The plan was rolling forward, but Derek needed more. He arranged separate meetings with Karen Sullivan, Rachel Walsh, and Diane Reeves at a private investigation firm's office, carefully timing each visit to ensure the women wouldn't cross paths. Karen Sullivan arrived first, her tennis-toned figure betraying tension as she sat across from Derek. Taylor Rodriguez sat quietly in the corner, recording everything. How long have you known about James's gambling? Derek asked without preamble. Karen's perfectly manicured hands clenched in her lap. 3 months. Found receipts from casinos, notices from debt collectors hidden in his golf bag. She pulled out a folder. I've documented everything. The amounts, the dates, the lies he told to cover it up. And the company theft? Suspected it. Her voice hardened. James talks in his sleep sometimes. Mentions numbers, transactions. I started recording him. She met Derek's eyes. He's scared of someone. Says they've got leverage over him. Derek nodded. Would you be willing to testify? In a heartbeat. Karen's smile was bitter. 20 years of marriage, and he threw it all away at a poker table. Rachel Walsh arrived next, her petite frame crackling with barely contained fury. She didn't wait for questions. Peter's been sleeping with Roxanne. She spat. Found their messages. She's got him convinced he deserves to run the company. Rachel pulled out her phone. I've got screenshots, recordings. Been gathering evidence for my divorce lawyer. What about the corporate espionage? Rachel's face paled. The what? Derek showed her surveillance photos of Peter meeting with Hamilton defense executives. She recognized one immediately. That man. Peter said he was a potential client. Her hands shook. Oh God, what has he done? Diane Reeves was last, and the most prepared. The quiet wife of his operations chief arrived with a laptop and external drive. Michael thinks I'm just his sweet, supportive wife, she said, her calm voice belying the steel beneath. He forgets I have a master's in computer science. I've been logging his activities for months. She showed them records of Michael's data transfers, his meetings with corporate spies, the payments he'd received. At first, I thought it was just the industrial espionage. Then I found this. She pulled up emails between Michael and Hamilton Defense, discussing the plan to frame Derek. They're going to plant evidence that you've been selling security vulnerabilities to foreign agents. Michael's been helping them create a digital trail. Derek studied the emails while Agent Torres, who had joined them, took notes. Why are you showing me this now? Because they're getting sloppy. Desperate. Diane's eyes flashed. Michael mentioned something about a deadline. Said everything has to be in place before some big dinner party. The pieces clicked into place. The monthly dinner party was in 3 days, the perfect setting for their trap. They'd probably plant the final evidence while everyone was distracted by social niceties. After the women left, Derek met with Agent Torres and Taylor in his secure office. The FBI agent spread out surveillance photos across his desk. Hamilton Defense has used this playbook before, Torres explained. They find a vulnerable executive, usually through gambling debts or affairs. Use them to compromise others in the company. Create a web of mutual blackmail until everyone's too compromised to back out. But they've never dealt with someone like you, Taylor added. Most of their previous targets were typical CEOs, not Marine Special Forces with intelligence training. Derek studied the evidence they'd gathered. Financial records, surveillance photos, recorded conversations, emails, text messages. A complete picture of betrayal orchestrated by the woman he'd trusted most. We have enough to arrest them now, Torres offered. Derek shook his head. Not yet. I want them to play out their hand. Want to see the looks on their faces when they realize who they're really dealing with. He pulled up the guest list for the upcoming dinner party on his secure laptop. Time to send out some invitations. Agent Torres raised an eyebrow. You're still having the party? Oh yes. Derek's smile was pure predator. But I'm adding a few unexpected guests to the list. He spent the next hour making calls, setting pieces into motion. The wives would be there, armed with their evidence. FBI agents would be in position. Every room in his house would be wired for sound and video. Let them come, he thought. Let them try to destroy everything he'd built. They thought they were dealing with a successful businessman who'd gone soft. They'd forgotten, or never truly understood, what he'd been before that. The Marine who'd conducted psychological warfare operations. The intelligence officer who'd broken enemy networks from the inside. Derek Mason had learned long ago that revenge was a dish best served with precision and patience. His enemies had spent months weaving their web of betrayal. In 3 days, he would show them what real betrayal looked like. The hunter was ready. The trap was set. All that remained was to watch his prey walk right into it. Chapter 4. The Gathering Storm. Derek Mason stood in his home surveillance room, reviewing the final preparations for tonight's dinner party. Multiple screens showed different angles of his mansion, each camera positioned to capture crucial moments of the upcoming confrontation. All recording systems are live, Agent Torres confirmed through his secure earpiece. We have teams in position around the perimeter. No one enters or leaves without us knowing. Derek checked his watch, 5:30 p.m. In 90 minutes, his enemies would arrive, expecting another pleasant evening of fine dining and subtle betrayal. They had no idea they were walking into their own execution. His phone buzzed. Karen Sullivan calling. Derek? James just left for his usual pre-dinner drinks with Peter and Michael. Perfect. Come in through the service entrance at 6. The staff will show you to the preparation room. Derek pulled up the surveillance feed from his target's usual bar. James Sullivan sat at their regular table, already working on his second scotch. Peter Walsh arrived next, then Michael Reeves. They clustered together, speaking in low voices while checking their phones. Taylor Rodriguez's voice came through his earpiece. Audio feed from the bar is live. Derek listened as his betrayers discussed their plans. Everything's set for tonight, Peter said, his voice slightly slurred. The evidence is ready. Once it's planted in Derek's office during dinner, the FBI will have everything they need. James knocked back his drink. Hamilton Defense's lawyers are standing by. They'll move fast once the arrest happens. What about Roxanne? Michael asked. She knows her role, Peter replied. Keep Derek distracted while we handle the technical details. Derek switched feeds to the surveillance outside Rachel Walsh's house. She was helping her daughter Amanda into a car, right on schedule. Similar scenes played out at the Sullivan and Reeves residences as their daughters were quietly brought into position. His phone lit up with a text from Diane Reeves. Final data package uploaded. Everything you need to bury Michael is in your secure server. The pieces were falling into place. Derek opened his wall safe and removed 3 identical manila envelopes, each containing devastating personal information about one of his former friends. He placed them carefully in his office, ready for the moment when maximum psychological damage would align with legal justice. At 6:15, Karen Sullivan arrived through the service entrance, her tennis-toned frame rigid with controlled anger. Rachel Walsh and Diane Reeves followed minutes later. Derek met them in a secure room equipped with monitors showing live feeds of the house. Your daughters? He asked. In position, Karen confirmed. Jessica still can't believe what her father's done. Rachel's voice shook. Amanda brought the medical records from the student Peter crippled. She wants to look him in the eye when it all comes out. Kimberly's ready too, Diane added. She has proof of Michael's theft from my mother-in-law's nursing home. Derek nodded, studying the 3 women who'd become unlikely allies in his revenge. Remember the sequence. Let them incriminate themselves first. Agent Torres will signal when to bring in the girls. His phone buzzed. Roxanne calling. He put it on speaker. Darling, I'm running a bit late. Last minute showing at the Henderson estate. Take your time, Derek replied smoothly. I'll make sure everything's ready when you arrive. He ended the call and pulled up another surveillance feed. It showed Roxanne not at any property showing, but meeting with Hamilton Defense's CEO in a hotel room. Their conversation confirmed the final pieces of the conspiracy. The timeline moves up tonight, the CEO was saying. Once Mason's arrested, we'll have a small window to seize control before the market reacts. Roxanne's laugh carried through the audio. Trust me, Henry. By midnight, Derek won't know what hit him. I've got the boys wrapped around my finger, and my husband still thinks I'm his faithful wife. Derek switched off the feed and turned to Agent Torres. Your people have everything they need? She nodded grimly. Multiple federal violations caught on tape. Conspiracy, fraud, attempted framing of a federal contractor. They're looking at decades in prison. The household staff, actually undercover FBI agents, moved efficiently through the house, setting up for dinner. Each place setting concealed a microphone. The elaborate table decorations masked high-resolution cameras. At 7 p.m. sharp, the first guests arrived. James Sullivan and his wife Karen entered separately, he from the bar, she pretending she'd just arrived from tennis. Derek greeted them in the foyer, playing the role of jovial host while noting how James's eyes darted around nervously. Peter and Rachel Walsh arrived next, followed by Michael and Diane Reeves. Derek watched through carefully concealed cameras as his 3 betrayers exchanged subtle glances, each man thinking he alone shared Roxanne's bed and confidence. Drink, Derek offered, playing the perfect host. He poured expensive scotch, noting how each man's hand trembled slightly as they accepted. Agent Torres, posing as a potential client, arrived precisely on schedule. She integrated smoothly into the group, drawing the men into shop talk about government contracts while secretly recording their increasingly incriminating conversation. Roxanne made her entrance at 7:30, perfectly coiffed and fashionably late. She kissed Derek's cheek with practiced affection, then circulated among their guests. Derek observed her subtle touches, meaningful glances, and private smiles that kept each of her lovers convinced of their special status. Dinner began at 8 p.m. Derek watched his enemies eat and drink, knowing each bite brought them closer to destruction. The conversation flowed naturally, decades of friendship providing cover for betrayal. A toast, Derek stood, raising his glass. To loyal friends and loving wives. He caught the quick glances between his betrayers, saw Roxanne's practiced smile. They thought they were so clever, so careful. They had no idea they were sitting in a trap built. James kept checking his phone under the table, probably his bookie demanding payment. Peter's eyes lingered too long on Roxanne, while his wife Rachel gripped her fork with white-knuckled tension. Michael barely touched his food, his programmer's hands fidgeting with his napkin. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. In minutes, Derek would spring his trap, unleashing a cascade of revelations that would destroy the people who had tried to destroy him. But first, he would give them just enough rope to hang themselves completely. "I have an announcement," he said, standing again, "about the future of Mason Digital Defense." The trap was about to snap shut. Chapter 5. The Confrontation. Derek moved to the head of the table, command presence radiating from his military-trained frame. A laptop sat ready, connected to the massive television screen mounted on the dining room wall. "Before we discuss the company's future," he said, "I'd like to share some interesting footage our security team recently compiled." James Sullivan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Peter Walsh's hand moved toward his phone. Michael Reeves went completely still, a programmer's tell when facing a system crash. "A demonstration of our new surveillance integration software," Derek continued smoothly. He pressed a button on a remote. The screen flickered to life, showing crystal-clear footage of James Sullivan entering the company's server room at 3 a.m., using stolen credentials. Another clip revealed Peter Walsh meeting with Hamilton defense executives. A third displayed Michael Reeves copying classified data onto external drives. "What is this?" James tried to bluster, but his voice cracked. "Keep watching." Derek's tone could have frozen nitrogen. "It gets better." The next series of clips showed each man's separate encounters with Roxanne, at hotels, in her office, even in Derek's own house. The timestamps made it clear she had been sleeping with all three of them during the same period. "You lying bitch." James turned on Roxanne, face purple with rage. "You said I was the only one." "She told me the same thing," Peter snarled. Michael didn't speak, but his expression shifted from shock to murderous fury. Roxanne maintained her composure, years of social training taking over. "Derek, darling, these videos are obviously fake. Someone is trying to frame me?" Derek cut her off. "For selling classified information to foreign agents?" "Yes, let's talk about that." He changed the display to show emails between Roxanne and Hamilton Defense's CEO, discussing the plot in explicit detail. The color drained from her face. "Perhaps our other guest would like to contribute to the discussion." Derek gestured toward the kitchen door. Karen Sullivan entered first, carrying a thick folder. "Found these in your private safe, James. Complete records of your gambling debts and company theft. Already sent copies to the SE." Rachel Walsh followed with her own evidence. "The student you crippled in that hit and run, Peter? His family deserves to know the truth." "Amanda?" Their daughter stepped into the room, tears streaming down her face. "How could you, Dad? You left him paralyzed and bought his silence with company money." "No." Peter stumbled to his feet. "You don't understand." "We understand perfectly," Derek's voice cut through the chaos. "Just like we understand how Michael has been stealing morphine from his mother's nursing home to sell on the black market." "Right. Kimberly?" Michael's daughter emerged from the kitchen, holding medical records and pharmacy logs. "Grandma was in pain, Dad. She begged for her medication while you were selling it for profit." The room exploded into accusations and denials. James lunged for his phone, but Karen knocked it away. Peter tried to delete files, but found his devices locked. Michael slumped in his chair, defeated. "One more guest," Derek announced. Agent Torres stood, pulling out her FBI badge. "James Sullivan, Peter Walsh, Michael Reeves. You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, corporate espionage, and attempted framing of a federal contractor." Armed FBI agents swarmed in from multiple entrances. James tried to run but was tackled professionally. Peter began spouting legal threats until an agent zip-tied his hands. Michael surrendered quietly, avoiding his daughter's accusing stare. Roxanne remained seated, her social mask finally cracking. "Derek, we can talk about this." "Nothing left to talk about." He turned to Agent Torres. She's the linchpin. Her communications with Hamilton Defense prove she orchestrated everything. Roxanne Preston Mason, you're under arrest. Torres moved to cuff her. You have the right to remain silent. You can't do this to me. Roxanne's cultivated image shattered completely. I made you, Derek. You were nothing but military trash before you saw a useful tool, Derek finished coldly. But you forgot something crucial about military training. He leaned close, voice dropping to a whisper. We're taught to identify and neutralize threats. The FBI led them away. James cursing, Peter threatening lawsuits, Michael in silent shame. Their wives huddled with their daughters. Years of deception finally laid bare. Roxanne walked out with her head high, but her hands shook in the handcuffs. Derek watched through his security feeds as multiple cars departed. FBI vehicles carrying their prisoners, his former friends' wives and daughters supporting each other as they left separately. Years of friendship, business, and marriage destroyed in a single evening. Agent Torres returned after processing the arrests. Hamilton Defense's CEO is already in custody. Their entire executive board will be indicted by morning. Derek nodded, pouring himself a scotch. Have your forensics team sweep the house. I want every bug, camera, or storage device they might have planted already on it. She studied him carefully. That was impressively ruthless, even by my standards. They tried to destroy everything I built. Derek's voice carried the cold efficiency of a combat veteran. Attempted to frame me as a traitor, steal my company, and send me to prison. All orchestrated by the woman who swore to love and honor me. And now they learn the cost of betraying Derek Mason. He raised his glass in a mocking toast. To consequences. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. The following morning, Derek sat in his office at Mason Digital Defense headquarters, watching multiple news channels cover the arrests. The story dominated every business network. Major defense contractor executives arrested in conspiracy. Corporate espionage ring uncovered. Hamilton Defense Systems CEO indicted. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Reporters demanding comments. Shareholders seeking reassurance. Government contacts requesting briefings. He ignored them all, focusing instead on the systematic dismantling of his enemies' lives. Taylor Rodriguez arrived with fresh intelligence. James Sullivan's bookie turned state's evidence. Apparently, James borrowed money from some extremely dangerous people. Make sure those loan sharks know where to find him after bail, Derek replied. Nothing fatal, just enough pressure to ensure full cooperation with prosecutors. Peter Walsh's victim from the hit and run went public. Press conference in an hour. His legal team is already filing civil suits. Derek nodded in satisfaction. Anonymous donation to fund their legal expenses. I want Peter buried in litigation. Michael Reeves' nursing home scam made the local news. Elder abuse advocates are demanding a full investigation of the facility. Have our foundation offer to cover care expenses for any affected residents, Derek instructed. I want the contrast clear. Michael stole from the elderly while we protect them. His secure phone lit up, Agent Torres calling. Stock market's opening. Hamilton Defense shares are in free fall. Derek switched to financial feeds. Hamilton's stock price was plummeting as investors fled the scandal. Trading would likely be halted within hours. Their competitors were already circling, preparing to strip the company for assets. Their board is panicking, Torres continued. 3 directors already offered to testify against the CEO. They're terrified of federal RICO charges. Good. Make sure they implicate Roxanne. I want her role in this thoroughly documented. He pulled up internal company messages. The initial shock was wearing off as employees processed their leader's betrayal. Derek had prepared for this, orchestrating a smooth transition that showcased his ability to handle crisis. A knock at his door, his new interim management team, ready for instructions. He'd selected them carefully, veterans with intelligence backgrounds, people who understood loyalty and consequences. Status report, he demanded. Finance department stabilized, his acting CFO reported. We've frozen all suspicious transactions, locked down the accounts James Sullivan accessed. Forensic accountants are tracking every penny. Government contract secure, another added. Pentagon appreciates how we handled the situation. They're actually expanding our security consulting role. Tech teams locked out all compromised systems, a third confirmed. Michael's access credentials are quarantined. No data breaches found. Derek dismissed them and turned to his final task of the morning. He opened a thick folder labeled Preston Holdings, Roxanne's family's former business empire, destroyed in the 2008 crash. Find out who holds their old debts, he instructed Taylor. Buy everything. I want control of any assets or properties they might try to hide behind. His phone buzzed again. Karen Sullivan. Derek? The girls want to see you. He agreed to meet Jessica, Amanda, and Kimberly for lunch. The daughters of his former friends deserved closure, needed to understand why their fathers had to be destroyed. The rest of the day passed in a blur of damage control and strategic planning. By evening, Derek had initiated shareholder communications to stabilize stock price, briefed key government clients on security measures, launched internal investigations of all compromised projects, prepared legal responses to inevitable lawsuits, coordinated with FBI on evidence preservation. He worked late, watching his security feeds as moving trucks arrived at his former friends' homes. Their wives wasted no time evacuating, taking whatever they could before assets were frozen. News coverage shifted to personal details. James Sullivan's gambling debts, Peter Walsh's hit-and-run victim, Michael Reeves' nursing home theft. Each revelation carefully timed to maximize destruction of their reputations. Shortly before midnight, his secure phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You've made some dangerous enemies. Derek actually smiled. After years in military intelligence and defense contracting, he knew exactly how to handle threats. His enemies were about to learn that their worst mistake wasn't betraying him. It was surviving to face his revenge. The next phase was already in motion. While the FBI handled criminal charges, Derek's private investigators were digging deeper. Everyone had secrets. His betrayers would discover that prison was just the beginning of their punishment. Anything else? He asked Taylor during their final briefing. Roxanne's defense attorney quit after seeing the evidence. She's requesting a private meeting. Denied. Derek's voice could have cut steel. She can watch her world burn from a jail cell. The following days brought a cascade of revelations. Each morning unleashed new headlines destroying his betrayers' reputations. Derek orchestrated every leak, timing them for maximum impact. Local news broke the story of Michael Reeves' nursing home theft first. Security footage showed him stealing medications from elderly patients, including his own mother. Interviews with nursing staff revealed he had threatened to fire them if they reported discrepancies. The facility's director, facing criticism, provided documentation of multiple complaints Michael had buried. Public reaction? Derek asked Taylor during their morning briefing. Social media is destroying him. Elder abuse gets people angry. Several patients' families are planning civil suits. Next came Peter Walsh's hit-and-run victim speaking out. The young college student, now wheelchair-bound, described how Peter had bought his silence through shell companies traced back to Mason Digital Defense Funds. Medical records proved the extent of injuries Peter had tried to minimize. James Sullivan's gambling addiction exploded across financial news. Anonymous sources revealed his connections to illegal betting rings. Bank records showed him stealing from children's college funds to cover debts. His bookie, facing pressure from multiple directions, provided detailed records of increasingly desperate bets. Derek met with the company's legal team to ensure all criminal evidence reached prosecutors while civil liabilities remained targeted at the individuals, not the corporation. He wanted his betrayers destroyed, but his company protected. Their defense strategies? He asked Agent Torres. They're turning on each other, she reported with professional satisfaction. Each claims they were manipulated by the others. James blames the gambling addiction. Peter cites depression and alcohol abuse. Michael says he was blackmailed. And Roxanne claims she was gathering evidence of their crimes to protect you. Her lawyer quit after seeing our recordings of her meetings with Hamilton Defense. Derek nodded, unsurprised. Keep them isolated during questioning. I want each one thinking the others are getting deals. The corporate fallout intensified. Mason Digital Defense stock stabilized as Derek demonstrated clear control of the situation. Hamilton Defense shares continued plummeting as more executives turned state's evidence. Government agencies suspended their contracts pending investigation. Derek's new management team, comprised of fellow veterans, implemented aggressive security protocols. They traced every compromised system, flagged suspicious transactions, and documented evidence of sabotage. Sir, his acting CFO reported, "We've identified all accounts James Sullivan accessed. Total theft approaches 8 million, not 7 as initially estimated. Transfer records?" Derek demanded. "Offshore accounts, gambling debts, gifts to mistresses, including Roxanne. We have complete paper trails." Derek met with Karen Sullivan, Rachel Walsh, and Diane Reeves to ensure they had resources for the coming legal battles. Their daughters, Jessica, Amanda, and Kimberly, struggled with their shattered family images but remained committed to exposing their father's crimes. "The girls want to make statements at the bail hearings," Karen informed him. "Good. Have them focus on personal betrayal, not corporate crimes. I want the judges seeing destroyed families, not just financial fraud." The media circus intensified. Reporters camped outside homes and offices, demanding comments. Derek's PR team stuck to carefully crafted statements emphasizing his role in uncovering corruption. The contrast was clear: a military veteran protecting national security versus traitors serving foreign interests. By week's end, the initial phase of Derek's revenge neared completion. His enemies sat in jail awaiting bail hearings. Their reputations lay in ruins. Federal prosecutors prepared airtight cases. But private investigator reports suggested new targets: political allies who had aided the conspiracy, business associates who had turned blind eyes, social contacts who had enabled betrayals. Derek began organizing intelligence on each, preparing for expanded waves of retribution. "You're not done, are you?" Agent Torres asked during their final meeting that week. Derek's expression remained impassive. "The criminal justice system handles crimes. I handle betrayal. They'll learn the difference." He turned back to his monitors, watching his enemies' worlds collapse while planning their complete destruction. The arrests were just the beginning. True revenge required not just punishment, but total annihilation of everything they valued. His phone buzzed, another reporter seeking comment. Derek ignored it, focused on surveillance feeds showing his betrayers in custody. They thought prison was their punishment. They would learn it was just the start of their suffering. The first phase of revenge was complete. His enemies were arrested, their crimes exposed, their reputations destroyed. But Derek Mason's retribution was far from finished. He had only begun showing them the cost of betrayal. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. The federal courthouse buzzed with tension as James Sullivan took the stand. A year had passed since the dinner party that destroyed his world, but the former CFO's expensive suit hung loose on his frame, his face gaunt from months in detention. "Mr. Sullivan," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court about your arrangement with Hamilton Defense Systems." James glanced at his defense attorney, then at the jury. His gambling addiction counselor had advised honesty, but old habits died hard. "I was manipulated," he attempted. "Roxanne Preston Mason seduced me, used my personal weakness." Objection. The prosecutor cut in. "The witness is not responding to the question." "Sustained," the judge barked. "Mr. Sullivan, answer the question directly." Derek Mason sat in the gallery, watching his former friend squirm. Agent Torres, beside him, murmured, "He's still trying to minimize his role." "Show the evidence from March 15th, Derek replied quietly. The prosecutor pulled up financial records on the courtroom screens. "Mr. Sullivan, these transfers to offshore accounts, they predate your involvement with Mrs. Mason by 6 months." "Explain that." James's facade cracked. "I needed the money. The gambling debts. They were going to hurt my family. So you chose to steal from the company that trusted you?" The prosecutor's voice sharpened. "Create fraudulent books? Accept bribes from competitors? You don't understand the pressure. The pressure of managing multiple affairs while embezzling millions? The prosecutor produced more documents. Or the pressure of planning to frame your supposed best friend for espionage? In the gallery, Karen Sullivan watched her ex-husband's destruction with cold satisfaction. The divorce had been finalized months ago, her settlement enhanced by evidence of his crimes. Their daughter Jessica sat rigid beside her, watching the father she no longer acknowledged. Peter Walsh's testimony came next. The former contracts negotiator had traded his bespoke suits for prison orange, his silver tongue tied in knots as prosecutors dissected his betrayal. These emails to Hamilton Defense, the prosecutor highlighted key passages. You provided classified details about Mason Digital Defense's government contracts. Why? Derek Mason didn't deserve his success, Peter snarled, his practiced charm cracking. I built those relationships. I secured those contracts, while accepting kickbacks. The prosecutor displayed bank records. While covering up a hit-and-run that paralyzed a college student, Amanda Walsh, watching from beside her mother Rachel, gripped the gallery railing until her knuckles whitened. The student her father had crippled sat across the aisle in his wheelchair, his family's civil suit already decimating what remained of Peter's assets. Michael Reeves broke down completely during his testimony. The former operations chief sobbed as prosecutors detailed his theft of prescription medications from his mother's nursing home. Your own mother begged for pain relief. The prosecutor's voice cut through his tears, while you sold her medication for profit. Then you used that money to buy classified information to sell to competitors? Diane Reeves and their daughter Kimberly had chosen not to attend his testimony. They were busy testifying before state medical boards, exposing the broader network of nursing home theft Michael had orchestrated. But the courtroom packed to capacity for Roxanne Preston Mason's testimony. Derek's wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, had lost her polished society veneer during pretrial detention. She still carried herself with practiced grace, but her eyes held the desperate calculation of a cornered animal. Mrs. Mason, the prosecutor began, please explain your relationship with Hamilton Defense's. Henry Blake and I had a legitimate business relationship. Roxanne attempted her usual smooth deflection. As a real estate agent, play the hotel recording, the prosecutor instructed. The courtroom speakers carried Roxanne's voice. Trust me, Henry. By midnight, Derek won't know what hit him. I've got the boys wrapped around my finger, and my husband still thinks I'm his faithful wife. That recording is out of context, Roxanne protested, but her poised mask slipped further as prosecutors produced email after email documenting her role in the conspiracy. You orchestrated the entire operation, didn't you? The prosecutor pressed. Used your position as Derek Mason's wife to gather intelligence. Seduced his closest friends to compromise them. Coordinated with Hamilton Defense to destroy your husband's company and reputation. Derek was supposed to be a stepping stone. Roxanne finally snapped. Just another military grunt with potential I could mold and use. He wasn't supposed to be smarter than me. Derek watched his wife's meltdown without expression, but his hands clenched briefly before relaxing. Agent Torres noticed but said nothing. She'd seen that same controlled rage when they'd planned this operation a year ago. The prosecution's final witness was Henry Blake, former CEO of Hamilton Defense. His testimony under immunity revealed the full scope of the conspiracy, how they'd identified Mason Digital Defense as a target, exploited personal weaknesses, planted evidence, and prepared to seize control once Derek was arrested. We'd done it before, Blake admitted, his corporate arrogance deflated by federal indictments. Find a successful competitor, compromise key employees, manufacture evidence of criminal activity. But Mason, we underestimated him completely. The jury took less than 6 hours to reach their verdicts. James Sullivan, guilty on all counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. 20 years in federal prison. Peter Walsh, guilty of corporate espionage, conspiracy, and attempted framing of a federal contractor. 25 years. Michael Reeves, guilty of selling classified information and conspiracy. 15 years with additional state charges pending. Roxanne Preston Mason received the harshest sentence, 30 years for orchestrating the entire conspiracy. The judge cited her extraordinary breach of trust and complete lack of remorse as aggravating factors. Derek stayed to watch each of his betrayers led away in chains. James shuffled out, avoiding everyone's eyes. Peter glared hatred at his former friend until guards yanked him away. Michael stared at the floor, broken. Roxanne maintained her dignity until the last moment, then turned to spit words at Derek. You destroyed everything. No, Derek replied, his voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. "You did that yourselves." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed for comments. Derek delivered a carefully prepared statement about justice and corporate accountability, while Agent Torres outlined the FBI's role in exposing the conspiracy. But in his private office later that night, Derek allowed himself a moment of pure satisfaction. His enemies would spend decades in prison. Their reputations were destroyed. Their families had abandoned them. Everything they valued, status, wealth, respect, was gone forever. He pulled up surveillance feeds showing his betrayers new accommodations. James accepting his prison uniform, Peter being escorted to maximum security, Michael huddled in his cell, Roxanne glaring at concrete walls instead of society galas. Phase 1 complete, he told Agent Torres over their secure line. Time for the next stage? They're already broken, she pointed out. The prison sentences are just the beginning, Derek cut her off. Prison they can survive. I want them to understand the true meaning of consequences. He opened files detailing his ongoing operations, monitoring their limited communications, ensuring they received no comfort or support, systematically dismantling any remaining resources or connections they might try to use. The legal system had given them cells. Derek Mason would give them despair. Chapter 8. The Transformation. Mason Digital Defense's headquarters had changed in the year since the arrests. Derek's new security protocols transformed the building into a fortress. Biometric scanners, AI-powered surveillance, and former military personnel replaced the comfortable corporate atmosphere. Another record quarter, his new CFO reported during the morning briefing. The government's expanded our contracts significantly since we exposed the Hamilton defense conspiracy. Derek studied the numbers on his tablet. The company had more than doubled in size, absorbing competitors and expanding globally. His reputation for uncovering corporate espionage brought new clients daily. Status on the veterans program? He asked. First class graduates next week. 20 former Special Forces troops trained in cybersecurity. Pentagon's already requested a dedicated team. Derek nodded with satisfaction. The foundation he'd created helped veterans transition to civilian careers while building a loyal workforce. He'd learned the hard way to trust people who understood military values. Agent Torres arrived for their weekly meeting, now formalized as part of an FBI partnership program. Your security protocols are becoming industry standard, she reported. 3 more companies requested consulting after that Chinese hacking attempt. And our other projects? She pulled up sealed files on her secure laptop. James Sullivan had attempted suicide in prison after receiving photos of his illegitimate daughter graduating high school, an event his gambling had forced him to miss. Peter Walsh faced new civil suits from other hit-and-run victims encouraged to come forward. Michael Reeves' cooperation with prosecutors had earned him enemy status among fellow inmates. Roxanne attempted to contact you again, Torres added. Through her new lawyer? Through a society friend. Claims she has information about other corporate conspiracies. Derek's laugh held no humor. Still trying to manipulate her way out. Decline the offer. He turned to surveillance feeds showing his ex-wife in prison. Her perfectly maintained appearance had cracked along with her social status. Each week brought new evidence of her fraudulent real estate deals, leaked to press and prosecutors. She actually thought I was a stepping stone, Derek mused. Just another grunt she could use and discard. That miscalculation cost her everything, Torres agreed. The society ladies who once courted her now pretend they never knew her. Derek's new inner circle consisted of carefully chosen allies. His executive team came from military or intelligence backgrounds. His social connections were limited but genuine. Trust, once broken, would never be given blindly again. The company's transformation reflected its leader's evolution. Where Mason Digital Defense once prioritized profits, it now focused on security and integrity. Each contract, each partnership underwent extreme vetting. Competitors learned to fear Derek Mason's reputation for exposing corruption. Latest intelligence? He asked Torres. Hamilton Defense is finished. Their remaining assets are being auctioned next week. 3 more executives took plea deals this morning. Derek allowed himself a small smile. The rival company's destruction had been total. Stocks worthless, contracts voided, executives imprisoned or ruined. A textbook example of his approach to enemies. His secure phone buzzed, Karen Sullivan asking to meet. He found her waiting in his private conference room, alongside Rachel Walsh and Diane Reeves. Their daughters stood with them, faces determined. "We want to help expand the foundation," Karen announced without preamble. Jessica's proposal for supporting children of incarcerated parent. Amanda's outreach to accident victims, Rachel added. And Kimberly's counseling program, Diane finished. Derek studied the women who had become unexpected allies in his revenge. They had transformed their pain into purpose, their betrayal into strength. Their daughters carried that same determination. Full funding, he decided. Whatever resources you need. His phone buzzed again. Another company requesting security consulting after a breach. Derek's reputation now attracted clients, hoping to prevent what had happened to Hamilton Defense. Late that night, he received a report from his prison sources. His betrayers had each received copies of their family's success without them. James learned of Karen's thriving nonprofit. Peter saw Rachel's best-selling memoir in the prison library. Michael watched news coverage of Diane's nursing home reforms. Psychological warfare continues? Torres asked during their next meeting. Derek's expression hardened. They chose betrayal. Now they watch everyone they love thrive without them. His revenge had evolved beyond mere punishment. Each achievement by the people they'd lost became another twist of the knife. Their isolation grew more complete as their families built new lives. Their desperate attempts at contact met with silence. The company's transformation was his most visible success, but Derek took greater satisfaction in the invisible changes. His enemies' complete destruction. His allies' renewed strength. The message sent to anyone considering betrayal. Derek Mason's revenge had no limits and no mercy. Chapter 9. The New Beginning. Derek Mason stood at his office window, watching the city lights of Washington, D.C. 5 years had passed since the dinner party that ended his perfect lies and revealed hard truths. His reflection showed a man tempered by betrayal into something stronger, more ruthless, more focused. His phone buzzed, Agent Torres sending her daily intelligence update. James Sullivan had been denied parole again, his psychiatric deterioration noted in prison records. Peter Walsh faced new criminal charges from evidence of other hit-and-run surfacing. Michael Reeves had been transferred to solitary protection after another inmate assault. Roxanne's latest appeal had been denied. Her prison diary, leaked to tabloids, revealed growing desperation as her beauty faded and isolation deepened. Society friends ignored her increasingly unstable letters. Her family's remaining assets had been seized through lawsuits Derek quietly funded. Final preparations for tonight? Torres asked when she arrived for their afternoon meeting. Derek nodded toward the banquet room visible through glass walls. Staff arranged tables for a private dinner, 5 years to the day since his revenge began. Guest list? She prompted. Karen Sullivan and her foundation's board. Rachel Walsh and her publisher. Diane Reeves and the Nursing Home Reform Commission. Their daughters and families. Quite a change from the last dinner party in this room. Derek's smile held satisfaction rather than warmth. A celebration of consequences. The guests began arriving at 7. Karen Sullivan came first, her tennis player's frame now radiating executive authority. Her foundation helped hundreds of families affected by gambling addiction. Jessica accompanied her, proud of the scholarship program she created for single mothers' children. Rachel Walsh arrived with Amanda, both fresh from a successful book tour. Rachel's memoir of surviving betrayal had topped bestseller lists. Amanda's advocacy for hit-and-run victims had helped change laws. They carried themselves with confidence earned through rebuilding their lives. Diane and Kimberly Reeves followed, discussing their latest nursing home oversight initiative. Diane's investigations had exposed widespread elder abuse. Kimberly's counseling practice specialized in helping families heal from betrayal. Other guests included business leaders, government officials, and military veterans, Derek's new circle of proven loyalty. Agent Torres came with her husband, her recent promotion making her the FBI's youngest division chief. Derek watched them mingle, noting how tragedy had forged genuine bonds. These people had faced betrayal and emerged stronger. Their success was his success, their strength a testament to his revenge. His secure phone buzzed with the day's final prison update. His betrayers had received detailed reports of tonight's gathering, carefully calculated to maximize their pain. James Sullivan learned of his daughter's engagement. Peter Walsh saw photos of his ex-wife's new bestseller. Michael Reeves read about his mother's improved care under new nursing home regulations. Roxanne's update hit hardest, documentation of her complete social extinction. Even prisoners received more visitors than the woman who once ruled Washington society. Her desperation had turned to bitterness as she realized no one was coming to save her. Derek stood to address his guests, his commanding presence drawing immediate attention. 5 years ago, this room witnessed the end of lies and the beginning of truth. Tonight we celebrate not just survival, but transformation. He raised his glass to Karen, Rachel, and Diane, the women who had helped destroy their husbands, to their daughters who had chosen integrity over loyalty, to allies who had proven their worth. Agent Torres caught his eye, remembering the ruthless precision of his revenge, the destroyed careers, the shattered lives, the ongoing psychological warfare against his imprisoned enemies. But that was Derek Mason, a man who had learned in combat that enemies must be utterly destroyed. His betrayers had gambled on him being merely a successful businessman. They had forgotten the military strategist, the intelligence officer who understood true psychological warfare. 5 years later, he had everything he wanted: a stronger company, loyal allies, the complete destruction of his enemies. Most importantly, the reputation that would deter future betrayals. Derek Mason raised his glass one final time, this time to himself. The military grunt had outmaneuvered them all. His perfect fake life had been replaced by real success built on proven trust and ruthless consequences. That was the true revenge. Not just destroying his enemies, but thriving because of their destruction. The son of a single mother from rural Pennsylvania had learned the hardest lesson. Trust must be earned, betrayal must be punished, and revenge is a dish best served forever. Epilogue. 10 years later. The Washington Post headline caught Derek Mason's attention. Hamilton Defense Systems executives released. A decade after historic corporate espionage case. He set his tablet down on his expanded office desk, now situated on the 30th floor of Mason Digital Defense's new global headquarters. At 52, Derek's steel-gray hair and battle-hardened physique projected even more authority than a decade ago. His company had grown into a $20 billion cybersecurity empire, setting industry standards and shaping national defense policy. The betrayal that nearly destroyed him had instead forged something far more powerful. His secure phone buzzed, Agent Torres, now Deputy Director of the FBI's Criminal Division, sending her weekly intelligence update on his former enemies. James Sullivan had been released after serving 8 years, mental health issues and good behavior reducing his sentence. The former CFO emerged to find his world completely erased. His daughter Jessica, now a successful nonprofit executive, had changed her surname and refused all contact. His ex-wife Karen's foundation helping gambling addiction victims had grown nationwide, her TED Talk about surviving betrayal viewed millions of times. Status on Sullivan? Derek asked during his regular call with Taylor Rodriguez, still his head of intelligence. Living in a halfway house in Baltimore, Taylor reported. Tried applying for accounting jobs, but his criminal record and our quiet word with industry contacts closed those doors. Works as a night janitor in a discount store. Gambling addiction relapsed last month. He's already in debt to loan sharks again. Derek allowed himself a small smile. He'd arranged for James to receive regular updates about his daughter's achievements, the scholarship foundation she ran, her recent marriage, her first child on the way. Each milestone hammered home everything James had lost through betrayal. Peter Walsh's release came with additional restrictions due to his hit-and-run victims' continued advocacy. The former contract negotiator found his law license permanently revoked, his assets drained by civil suits Derek had quietly funded. His ex-wife Rachel's best-selling memoir had been adapted into an award-winning film, while their daughter Amanda had become a prominent victims' rights attorney. Walsh tried contacting his old law school connections. Taylor continued. They're all suddenly too busy to meet. His LinkedIn profile has 3 views this month, all from our surveillance team. Michael Reeves served his full term, his prison time marked by isolation as Derek's influence ensured other inmates knew about his theft from his own mother. He emerged to discover his technical skills obsolete, his industry contacts evaporated, His professional certifications expired. His daughter Kimberly had earned a PhD in psychology, her research on family trauma and betrayal earning international recognition. Reeves applied for a programming job last week, Taylor reported with satisfaction. The hiring manager received an anonymous video of his courtroom confession about stealing from his mother's nursing home. Application denied. But Derek's most ruthless ongoing revenge targeted Roxanne. His former wife still had 20 years left on her sentence, her appeals exhausted, her prison days marked by growing isolation. Her carefully maintained beauty had faded under institutional lighting. Her social circle had evaporated as former friends embraced her victim's narrative. Roxanne's latest therapy session recording, Taylor forwarded the file. Still fixated on her fall from grace. The psychiatrist notes increasing paranoid tendencies. She believes you're personally orchestrating her daily humiliations. Aren't I? Derek's voice carried dark amusement. He turned to his multiple monitors displaying Mason Digital Defense's current operations. The company had transcended its defense contractor roots to become a global cybersecurity leader. Their client list included governments, multinational corporations, and intelligence agencies. The betrayal that targeted their vulnerabilities had instead sparked an obsession with impregnable security. His office door opened, Karen Sullivan arriving for their quarterly foundation review. At 50, she carried herself with the confidence of a successful executive rather than a betrayed wife. Her tennis-toned figure drew admiring glances, but she had never remarried, focusing instead on helping other families affected by gambling addiction. The new treatment center opens next month, she reported without preamble. Jessica wants to name it after your mother, honoring another strong woman who raised her child alone. Derek nodded approval. His mother had passed away 5 years ago, but her legacy lived on through the foundations his revenge had inadvertently created. How is Jessica handling impending motherhood? Determined her child will never know James exists. The prison sent another request for visitation rights. We shredded it unopened. Rachel Walsh arrived next, her media presence polished by years of speaking about surviving betrayal. Her second book had just hit the bestseller lists, this one focusing on helping children cope with imprisoned parents. Amanda accompanied her, fresh from arguing a landmark victims' rights case before the Supreme Court. Peter tried sending a letter. Rachel mentioned, her voice hard, something about wanting to make amends. Amanda used it as kindle for her fireplace. Diane and Kimberly Reeves completed the gathering, their nursing home reform organization now operating in multiple states. Diane had channeled her pain into protecting vulnerable seniors, while Kimberly's psychological research helped families heal from similar betrayals. Michael's parole officer called, Diane said. He's been asking about his mother's current nursing facility. We made sure they added him to the banned visitors list. Derek studied these women who had transformed from victims into forces for change. Their success was his success, their strength a testament to his philosophy of complete retaliation. He had not only destroyed his betrayers, but had turned their own families into weapons of ongoing revenge. Agent Torres joined them, her FBI authority adding federal weight to their private revenge. Hamilton Defense's remaining assets were just auctioned. The company that once planned to destroy you is now officially extinct. Derek's new inner circle represented a decade of careful cultivation. His executive team consisted of former intelligence operatives and special forces veterans. His social connections were few but ironclad. The lesson of betrayal had birthed an empire built on verified trust and swift consequences. Update on the revenge funds? He asked Taylor. She pulled up detailed spreadsheets showing money flows through untraceable accounts. Funds ensuring his enemies remained unemployable, resources supporting their family's success without them, capital maintaining their total isolation. James Sullivan's gambling debts are growing, Taylor noted. His loan sharks receive anonymous tips about his night janitor income. Peter Walsh's job applications mysteriously include his victim's impact statement. Michael Reeves' mother's new nursing home costs are fully covered, but he's banned from visiting. And Roxanne, her commissary account keeps her fed, but not comfortable. Prison staff routinely receive evidence of her past manipulations. Fellow inmates learn about her role destroying families. She hasn't had a visitor in 3 years. Derek turned to the wall of screens, showing his company's global reach. Mason Digital Defense had expanded into artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and predictive threat analysis. Their security protocols were considered unbreakable, a direct result of surviving attempted destruction. The company they tried to steal, he mused, now sets industry standards for preventing corporate theft. The man they tried to frame trains governments to catch spies. The families they tried to control work to help other victims. His phone buzzed with another intelligence update. James Sullivan drinking away his meager janitor's salary, Peter Walsh being turned away from another law firm's door, Michael Reeves failing another coding interview. Roxanne staring at prison walls that would hold her for 2 more decades. The revenge that began with arrests and prison sentences had evolved into something far more sophisticated. Derek Mason had learned that true retribution required patience, resources, and absolute commitment. His enemies didn't just lose their freedom. They lost hope, dignity, and any chance of redemption. Karen's foundation thrived while James cleaned toilets. Rachel's books topped bestseller lists, while Peter faced endless rejection. Diane protected seniors, while Michael's technical skills rusted away. Their daughters built successful lives while deliberately erasing their fathers from family history. And Roxanne, who thought she could use a military veteran as a stepping stone, watched from behind bars as he built an empire on the ashes of her schemes. The gathered women discussed their ongoing projects, foundations, books, legal reforms, psychological research. Each success twisted the knife in their imprisoned betrayers. Each achievement proved life improved after removing cancerous relationships. 10 years, Agent Torres mused. Most people would have moved on by now. Derek's smile carried no warmth. Moving on implies forgetting. I prefer they remember every single day what betrayal cost them. His revenge had transcended mere punishment to become something approaching art. The psychological warfare continued with precision and patience. His enemy's destruction wasn't a single event, but an ongoing process of isolation, humiliation, and regret. The son of a single mother from rural Pennsylvania had learned his lessons well. Trust must be earned through proven loyalty. Betrayal must be punished beyond all hope of recovery. And revenge, properly executed, never truly ends. Derek Mason had built his perfect life once on naive trust. Its destruction taught him to build something stronger on verified loyalty and ruthless consequences. A decade later, his enemies' continued suffering proved the wisdom of that lesson. He turned back to his monitors displaying Mason Digital Defense's global operations. The company born from betrayal had become a fortress, protecting others from similar attacks. His enemies had tried to steal a successful business and instead created an empire founded on their destruction. The gathered women, Karen, Rachel, Diane, and their daughters, represented his philosophy in action. They had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, their success becoming another weapon in his arsenal of revenge. Their achievements trapped their betrayers in eternal regret for what they lost. Agent Torres prepared to leave for another high-level FBI meeting. Taylor updated surveillance files on the released prisoners. Derek's security teams monitored global operations. The machinery of success ground forward, each motion deepening his enemies' despair. 10 years after the dinner party that exposed betrayal, Derek Mason had everything he wanted. A dominant global company. Loyal allies bound by shared pain. The complete destruction of his enemies' lives, hopes, and futures. That was his true masterpiece. Not just punishing betrayal, but ensuring his enemies spent decades watching others thrive from their destruction. The military grunt they underestimated had outmaneuvered them all, transforming attempted treason into eternal torment. Trust, loyalty, consequences. The lessons learned through betrayal had built something unbreakable, and somewhere in cheap apartments and prison cells, his enemies remembered each day what it cost to betray Derek Mason. The revenge that began with a dinner party had become a life's work, and he intended to maintain it until his last breath. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.